I'd like to reconvene the meeting. Thank you. I want to move back to item 27, Public Works, approval. This is a public hearing and approval of the resolution of necessity. Mr. Pack, are you going to be with us? Oh, okay. I want to open the public hearing. Mr. Pack.
Yes, can you hear me, Board?
Yes, thank you.
Can you see my presentation before you?
Yes.
Great. So, good afternoon, Chair Callaway and members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Joshua Pack. I'm your Director of Public Works, and I am here today to present the resolution and necessity public hearing for the State Route 4 Wagon Trail project. I do want to highlight I have 3 other people on the call that are here to answer technical questions, including Robert Pattinger, our Deputy Director, Matt Satow, our Project Manager with Dewberry Drake Haglin, and Brenda Aguiar Guerrero, our Legal Counsel for the Wagon Trail project with extensive experience in resolutions of necessity and property acquisition. So the action we're asking you to take today is to approve a resolution of necessity which would determine the interest and necessity in requiring various property interests for the State Route 4 Wagon Trail project. Now, resolutions of necessity require us to make certain findings. The first finding is that the public interest and necessity requires the proposed project. Number 2 is that the project is planned in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. Number 3, the property described in this resolution is not only necessary, but it is necessary for the proposed project. And then number 4 is that the offer, in accordance with the government code, has been made to the owners of record. You'll find in your exhibits, not only in the resolution and staff report, but in the exhibits and attachments, as well as the information presented today, should not only satisfy, I believe, go far in exceedance of those findings. I want to highlight that there could be other things that come up as part of this hearing that aren't necessarily germane to the findings the board can take today. Compensation is one of those, and that's not necessarily part of this conversation today. I know the board is intimately familiar with the Wagon Trail project, but for folks who are maybe viewing at home who are unfamiliar, the project has been either formally or informally planned for the county for many decades. It stretches generally from Copperopolis to the town of Angels Camp. There are a number of segments. We are primarily focusing right now on the western segment. We believe we now have sufficient funding to deliver the project, which is very exciting. And but this is just a general overview of the project at large. And so the project need, and again, this is part of satisfying the project, and I don't think I need to, go through a long laundry list of the project history and the need, but I know Supervisor Callaway said it very well on a conference call last week that the road follows the original wagon trail, and anytime you try to utilize a road that was really not designed, but was, built in the 19th century and use it for 21st century vehicles and traffic, it's just not a good recipe. And you see that in the collision history. We have a very high collision history, 66 vehicles in the most recent 3-year period. And it seems like every time you pick up the Calaveras Enterprise or another local newspaper, you read about some sort of incident on this section of Highway 4. There are also operational issues that you're aware of, and this helps address some of those operations. But safety is certainly a primary factor as part of this project. Now, again, I'm not going to go through the entire history of the project, but the most recent iteration, the real formal efforts, began 20 years ago. And I want to highlight, especially since 2010, with the development of the environmental document, the environmental and engineering studies and technical studies, as well as the public hearings, not only to determine alternatives, but to determine alternatives in an analysis and with public feedback that really were designed to minimize, impacts to the public and private residents while being able to deliver the project. We are currently in the final right-of-way and design phase. We're essentially, at the 1-yard line. We're ready to punch it in, to use my football analogy. And I believe this helps to satisfy, or not only satisfy, again, to really bring to the point that we've done a lot of effort above and beyond satisfying those minimum qualifications for the findings today. Now, the right-of-way is the last key component. In order for us to move forward with the project, we have to certify the right-of-way with the state. We have to have the property before we can build on the property. And despite the fact that we've done everything we can to minimize impacts, we do have impacts. Anytime you relocate a highway, there are going to be impacts. And we have 7 property owners identified, and we've been fortunate. We've come to an agreement with 6 of those property owners, including one just last Wednesday. We have 1 property owner, and that's the Tiscornia parcel that remains unresolved. And moving forward in this presentation, when I say a property owner, the primary negotiator that we've been working with has been Cole Tiscornia, but there are actually 4 identified property owners, and they're all listed here. And so just kind of keep that in mind when I talk about property owner. If I use that in singular term, it's really referring to this group of folks. But Cole Tiscornia has been our primary point of contact. Now, the parcel in question, we are acquiring various interests, property interests. The biggest one is simple fee, which is another word for actually buying the property. It's not an overly wide parcel, but with the length of Highway 4, it ends up being a number of acres of purchase. We also have some utility easements, one for Caltel and one for PG&E. And we also have what's called a temporary construction easement. And that's temporary in nature to stage construction materials and equipment and to stage just construction activity. And when we're done, that returns back to the property owner in its original condition. Now, the appraised value, the current appraised value is $285,000. And I highlight that because the original appraised value 6 months ago was quite a bit lower than that. And through our negotiations and through our working with the property owner, we've identified a number of issues that we agree with the property owner need to be resolved, and that has been reflected in an increased appraisal amount to account for those additional items that we've identified to make the property owner whole and to minimize the impacts on their parcel. So the timeline goes back a little bit before July, but I'm going to focus quite a bit on since July 8th, which is on or around the date that we made our first formal offer. And we've met in particular with Tiscornia and his representatives a number of times through field meetings and phone calls, Zoom meetings, in-person meetings to discuss not only the valuation of the parcel, but a number of operational issues. And after our last meeting in September or October, we came away with the impression that we had resolved most, if not all, of his operational issues, but compensation was still a concern. Nevertheless, we did present a counter offer to the property owner on October 28th, and with no response, we sent this notice to the property owner on or around November 12th in accordance with state law. I do want to highlight that if you are interested or if the public's interested in seeing a detailed history of all of our correspondence, it is included in the attachments in the staff report and resolution. So we've made a lot of effort. I think we've done a lot of work to negotiate in good faith to address the issues that the property owner has identified. We've reflected that in the increased compensation. And I want to highlight that this process hasn't been acrimonious to date. We've been working together, and it can be. It is a difficult process. The one thing I would say, though, is at this time we have not received any counter proposal from the property owner. And I don't think you need to have a master's in negotiating to recognize that you have to have 2 parties to negotiate, and we don't have that. And as a result, we've reached what we would call an impasse, which is why we're here today. And there's some other reasons that I'll get into in the upcoming slides. One of those is the funding. For those of you that are familiar, the project has about $10.3 million in state SHOP funds. That was identified by Caltrans. In order to be eligible to receive this $10.3 million, there are a couple of timelines that have to be hit. We have to certify our right-of-way, which means not only acquire the necessary right-of-way, but have the state certify it by the middle or end of April. And then subsequent to that, the California Transportation Commission has to allocate the funding at their June 2021 meeting. And one of the things with this funding is it's use it or lose it. And so we're unaware of any flexibility to obtain extensions or any sort of grace period. And so if we're not able to meet this deadline, not only do we risk losing the 10.3, there are some other funding sources that would likely be lost, including the recent grant funding in the amount of about $5.9 million that the county received just a couple of weeks ago from the CTC for this project as well. So it's a domino effect here that if we lose this, it's likely that we will lose these other funding sources. Now, in order for us to certify the right-of-way, and for Caltrans to certify it, they have 3 levels of certification. 1, 2, and 3 really original. But level 1 is a very basic, we agree with the property owner, everyone shakes hands, we sign an agreement, and we have the property. And we've done that so far with 6 of the 7 property owners. Level 2 is that we agree that the project's going to move forward, we agree on the property that's going to be acquired, but we don't agree on a price. And in those cases, we can enter in what's called a possession and use agreement to memorialize that, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. Level 3 is when not only do we not agree on the price, there's other parameters we don't agree on, and we're at that impasse, and that we have to follow court proceedings to get what's called an order of possession. And I'll talk about that here in a couple of slides as well. So the level 2 that would actually be ideal, I think it would be a really good option here, is, again, it's when both parties agree on everything, but we don't necessarily agree on the price. And if we can get the property owner to agree and to execute an agreement to this effect, that allows us to certify the project's right-of-way and move forward with construction by recognizing at the same time that we haven't agreed on price and that there will be a separate process to do so, including arbitration or some sort of mediation by a third party if we can't come to an agreement ourselves. This also preserves the property owner's right to determine final price, much like they would through eminent domain proceedings. And another advantage of this is once we sign this possession and use agreement, the property owner would get a payment of that appraised amount into an escrow account in which they can use immediately. So that $285,000 would immediately go into an escrow fund and could be drawn upon by the property owner before the final process has been determined. So this is certainly a valuable process to us. We have asked the property owner to consider and potentially sign that, and so far the owner has not signed this possession and use agreement. So as a result, we are making the recommendation to start the level 3 process. I want to highlight that this is our last option. This is not a preferable option. This process states that we've not only identified the need for these property interests, but we've gone through a process to appraise and negotiate that in good faith. If the board does approve that today, this starts a 5-month process to obtain that order of possession, which will allow us to then get a level 3 certification and move forward with the project. And the one thing I want to highlight today is this is not a simple majority vote. It requires a 4/5 board vote in order to approve it. So I wanted you to be aware of that. The one thing I want to share with the board and the public that are on is we recognize the sensitivity of property acquisition. It's inherent in our Bill of Rights. It's in the 5th Amendment, or the 5th Amendment of the Bill of Rights. It's called the Takings Clause. We recognize the sensitivity to this. We have not taken this action in decades. I'm not aware. I know Robert isn't aware. I don't think, at least with Public Works, we have not taken any similar action for any recent history. And we do that for a reason, because we recognize the sensitivity of that and the impacts it can have on property owners, especially a family like the Scornias that have given so much to our community over many, many decades. I want to highlight, too, that just because if the board takes action today, that doesn't end our negotiating process, and we will continue to negotiate with the property owners until either we get a resolution or and get an agreement, or potentially have to follow through with this process. I will say that in most cases, after a resolution of necessity is adopted, usually parties reach an agreement before it reaches the end game and the order of possession. And I can speak to my experience in my prior jurisdiction. I've gone through this twice before, and in both cases, the parties have reached agreement within weeks after this step has been taken. So I can speak to my experience similar to the general experience of our legal counsel, that this is, and that's what we're hopeful to, whether it's a level 2 certification or whether we can come to an agreement shortly thereafter. We will certainly push for that. There is an alternative. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't share with you the alternatives you have before you today and the potential impacts or benefits of that. The board can certainly either reject the resolution of necessity or delay action. If that's the case, the county and our actors will continue to negotiate with property owners. However, if we can't reach an agreement, the county's likely to lose not only that 10.3, but the additional funding of 20.7. And I wrote down here that the construction of Wagon Trail will be delayed indefinitely, and I think that's being optimistic. With 20 years of history, with the state putting up so much funding, I think if we aren't able to meet this deadline, I think the state funding goes away and the project dies. That's my opinion. It's going to be very difficult for the state to reconsider giving us funding if we can't get past this deadlock. So I also want to highlight, before I move on to the next slide and open it up to questions, is to date we've spent about 7.4 in our local state funding shares already on the project through its preliminary phases. So we've made a pretty sizable investment over the last 20 years on this project. So in conclusion, we are making the recommendation to the board to approve this resolution. We think not only have we satisfied these findings, I think we've gone far above and beyond to try and negotiate in good faith. And I want to highlight, too, that we made that decision. I think the board's familiar that we made a decision instead of Caltrans moving forward with this process. We decided for the county to do that, and the reason for that was we felt we were in a better position to represent the property owner interests. Caltrans can be a bit rigid in their approach sometimes. They can be draconian and kind of bully folks around. We recognized as the county that we could be in a better position to empathize with property owners and be able to negotiate and cooperate with them to recognize things without necessarily jeopardizing our stewards of public funds, but at the same time, we can coordinate and work with property owners, and we've done that with all of the property owners save one. We will continue to negotiate with the property owners in parallel with this process, but we recognize that if it does go to fruition, it may take as much as 5 months to process the right-of-way, and if you're doing the math at home, that would put us at a target date of April, which is very close to the June CTC authorization date. So we are essentially at the deadline, and that's why we're bringing it to you today. I do want to highlight, though, if we end up going through the entire process, we hope to get the project funding award in June, and likely advertise the project in the late summer and potentially start in fall. If we can get agreement sooner and get that funding from the CTC sooner, there's nothing stopping us from starting this project sooner, and we will certainly pursue that aggressively if we can do that. So, again, that ends my presentation. I appreciate your time and your patience. Again, I have 3 folks on the call. In particular, if you have questions about legal matters, Brenda is very experienced in this and can answer those questions. And with that, I'm going to open up to the board and the public and see if you have any questions. Thank you.
Board, do any of you have any questions or comments at this time? Mr. Pack, if this does not go through, do we have to return that $7 million?
Supervisor Callaway, that's a good question. I don't believe, since they're local STIP shares, I don't think that's the case. It could be if there's any federalized funding involved. I'll have to look and get more information to you. Obviously, $21 million is a lot, and any amount we'd have to return is much smaller than that. I don't think the STIP shares have to be returned, but I know on other federal projects that is always a concern. So if that's a question, I'm happy to follow up and provide that information.
Yeah, thank you. No questions from my colleagues? No? Are there any questions or comments from the public?
Not at this time.
All right. This is a public hearing. Mr. Tuffanelli.
Yeah, Josh, I do have a question. Obviously, you've been discussing or talking with Cole. Have you had any conversations or discussions with any of the other 3 people that have interest in this property?
Supervisor Tofinelli, not directly as I'm aware, and I can let Matt or Brenda, if I'm incorrect, we have sent notices to them in accordance with state law. The notices that were required to, not only with the offers, but also with the acquisition. We've been coordinating with them on that level. But as far as the day-to-day correspondence, trying to come up with agreements, especially with the operational issues on the ranch, no, those other three have not been nearly as involved or as involved as Cole has. Cole has definitely been the point person.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pack, Mr. Tosconia and his attorney both knew about today's meeting?
Yes, we provide notification for them on November 12th. They did have a time frame. They had 15 days from the notice to provide written response to appear here, although they certainly also have the right through public comment. They were notified and they were aware, and we continue to inform them as we've continuing to been trying to negotiate during that time between that original notice and we have not heard much, if any, response from them.
Okay, thank you. Well, hearing no public comment, and Mr. Tofinelli?
Yeah, let me get to the right page here. I'm looking at your timeline that you gave us, and on 11/6, the last entry, says you called Mr. Foley to follow up with the PAU and left a message with his secretary, and he was in the meeting. You have no response or no communication with Mr. Foley at all since 11/6?
No, unfortunately, there is a deadline for submitting items into our system for consideration for board agenda. And so the deadline, the documentation reflects the submittal into the system in mid-November. So there has been correspondence since then that's not reflected in our report or resolution because of that deadline to submit information.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, hearing no questions or public comment, I want to close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for action on a resolution of necessity determining the public interest and necessity requiring acquisition of property interest in several accessible parcels for the State Route 4 Wagon Trail project ownership under the Tosconia Trust. Mr. Mills.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make the motion to approve the resolution of necessity to determine the public interest and necessity in acquiring acquisition of property interest in these assessor parcels as listed.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Mills. Do I have a second?
I just want to say one thing first, Madam Chair. I appreciate all the work that Public Works has put into this. They've gone into this with goodwill and done everything in within their means to be able to facilitate this in acting in good faith. This is definitely a project that's needed and has been long in the works. But I will have to say that eminent domain is something that I have some serious issues with. So I'm just going to say that prior to the vote.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second on this resolution?
I'll second it, Madam Chair.
A second by Supervisor Garamendi. Mr. Tofinelli.
I want to have a couple words before we
Sure.
take the vote. Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, Madam Chair, this has been a long time coming, not this resolution, but this whole project has been ongoing for quite some time. As long as I've been involved in this board, it's been going. There was a lot of contentious times that went forward. We had meetings at Bret Harte High School that were very contentious, a lot of different people involved. And to get to this point, in time where we are this close. We have funding. We're this close to this long-needed project. It's very well spelled out in what's been given to us by Public Works. The road is very narrow. There's no shoulders. The accident rate is just tremendous, especially since they opened Pool Station Road up and did the improvements there. They did so much there, widening the road, and then all of a sudden the road gets narrow again, and that's where you're having a lot of the accidents, because it goes narrow real quick and then a sharp turn to the right, and you have potential for many, many accidents that needs to be straightened out. Hopefully we can come to an agreement before we go all the way down the line on this eminent domain thing. I feel the same way as Supervisor Stopper does on it. But we need to move forward just to protect the public themselves. Many of our constituents that drive that road, even school buses drive that road, going back and forth from Copperopolis. I know many try and take Pool Station Road. It has its own problems in itself, Pool Station Road. It'd be very nice to get this project completed with an open road and straightening out some of the curves so it's very safe traveling both ways. So that's what I wanted, my comments.
Okay.
Before the
Mr.
vote.
Mills, did you have a comment too, please?
Before we vote, ma'am, thank you. I have been personally the recipient of an eminent domain proceeding, so I don't like eminent domain at all. Never have. But there are times when there is a public good, and being in the emergency services for as long as I have, and having actually been a witness to some of the incidents that have occurred in this section of roadway, it's a heart wrencher for both sides, and I understand why there's contention, but I also understand that there's a public safety issue that has to be resolved, and we have the money. It's not a matter of that. If we were talking about this 10 years ago, it'd be a different story. But we have the money now, so let's move forward. Let's get it done.
I guess I'll make a comment too. This has been the county's highest priority. It's been in the works for well over 20 years. Are not getting caught up in the eminent domain, but realizing what is the goal. The goal is to do this project. And if this is the last and final step that we have to go through to do it, then I strongly believe this is something that we need to vote on. As uncomfortable as it is, but I don't want us getting caught up in, well, I don't believe in eminent domain, and then we're going to lose this project forever. We might as well say we don't want it. And it's not just Mr. Pack or those of us on the board today, but prior board members, prior public works directors, the contentious meetings we've had with everybody who lived along the Highway 4 corridor. This is just sort of the last effort that we can do to make it happen. And I hope I'll have your vote. So unless any other, Mr. Stopper, did you want to make a comment?
Just have my mic on to vote.
Oh, okay. All right. I have a motion by Mr. Mills, a second by Mr. Garamendi. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes on a 5-0 vote of the board. Mr. Pack, thank you. And don't go away. I just want to do one housekeeping thing on item 23 that Mr. Mills pulled. I have been in touch with Ms. Turner, and we will be dealing with that issue just before item 32. Okay, Mr. Pack, I'd like to do item 28, please. I can see you've made all the supervisors happy with this.
Oh,
Well, you know, there are a couple, I want a horse trade here.
well, this is the stuff I love to bring to you. And I'm really pleased to present the 2021 draft Public Works Capital Improvement Program. And before I move forward into the program, I do want to highlight staff. First of all, the delivery of a robust capital improvement program is really, it's an entire department endeavor, and I have to take a second to recognize all of our departments and their critical role in delivering projects and programs for our community. This upcoming program for the 2021 year, I want to highlight two folks in particular. Mark Kenzilak, our business administrator, has been involved in the budget side of things to develop the fiscal performas and the budgeting necessary to fund the projects. And then Jennifer Ellis, our senior civil engineer, has been a critical person to help deliver the project sheets, identify new projects, work with Mark to fund those, and then on the other side, then she gets the enviable task of trying to deliver this large amount of projects for the county. So I want to thank them for their efforts before I move forward. Really quick today, I have a couple of focuses here. I want to touch briefly on where the money comes from to fund the program. I want to look back at the 2020 season. It's truly been historic and an opportunity maybe to just recognize some of the achievements we've had over the past year. And then shift to 2021 with a special emphasis on our paving program, talk about some of the changes and many of the things that are staying the same, some of the other projects for 2021, and then some other major future projects. And I think most important, though, is to give an opportunity for the board and the public to see the draft plan and provide input and direction. And the goal today is for, again, this is not an action item. It's to receive feedback, comments, and input that we can take to amend the program and bring it back to you for adoption in early 2021. And the goal of that is to basically roll right into the mid-year budget. So the information that you provide is immediately utilized for our budgeting purposes in just a month or two. So I don't plan to spend a lot of time on this. Really, generally, we have two revenue sources. We have what's called discretionary funding, which gives us the flexibility to spend in ways that we see fit, and we have restricted revenue, which is usually project or program specific. Now, the vast majority of our discretionary revenue helps fund our core services, maintenance services, fleet maintenance, administrative services. We only utilize 2% of our revenue for the capital improvement program, which, in an ideal world, if funding was more robust, we would be using more discretionary revenue for much needed projects. But with that said, the restricted revenue, like federal funds, another resource was the gas tax that was passed in 2017. There is a set aside called the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account, and that's earmarked for projects, primarily maintenance projects. The PG&E settlement funding that this board approved for improvement for roads for Butte Fire, all of those are considered restricted revenue in one way or another. And these three programs alone fund more than 91% of our combined capital improvement program. Overall, this year, we're proposing a 5-year, $96.1 million program. It's pretty similar to last year as far as monetary value. That will go down in future years, and Wagon Trail is a big part of that. As Wagon Trail gets hopefully delivered here in the next couple of years, that will shrink the program. But this year it stays relatively similar because the projects we delivered in 2019 and the prior fiscal year have been replaced by new projects. So there's been kind of a wash between the projects that were delivered and the new projects. But as I mentioned, this project will decrease, especially as we continue to deliver projects and get those off the backlog. Before I move forward with 2021, I want to take a few minutes and to do a shameless pat on the back for the work that we've all done collectively in 2020. 2020 has been nothing short of historic. We've delivered 15 projects. We started 17. We have 2 that are the Canyon View and Gwen Mine that started this fall and will continue again in the spring and summer. But these are all sorts of projects. Some of them, like the 6 Mile Road project, the O'Burns Ferry Road, and the Mountain Ranch Road, were projects that were on the books for years or a decade or more, and the department finally was able to deliver. Other ones, there was a specific focus on road resurfacing, as identified through the Burson Road and the SB1 road resurfacing program, as well as the Butte Fire projects. We completed 2 bridge projects, both over low water crossings. We did road safety projects, disaster recovery projects. There really isn't one dominant project. We did a lot of work to a lot of the benefit of the county and all over the county, benefiting all 5 districts. Again, it's a lot of projects. In a typical year, we may do 3 to 5, so the fact that we did 15 is truly historic. And I want to highlight that this success flies in the face of the logistical challenges that we all faced in 2020. In mid-March, COVID restrictions came down. There was a month period that I didn't know if we were going to be doing any projects. And March and April is the prime time to be advertising projects, getting those ready for construction. It was we didn't know what was going to happen. We also lost some key engineering staff. We lost our only licensed staff level engineer. We've had a heavy road maintenance workload, not only with the disaster recoveries, but our road crews were prepping a lot of these projects for construction on our behalf. And so despite those challenges, we were able to meet or exceed the expectations identified in the previous CIP. And I want to highlight really quick, and the board earlier today approved a bid package for job order contracting. There's no way we could have done a fraction of the work without the JOC program. We delivered, my early estimate is somewhere around $6.3 million in projects through JOC. A lot of them are repetitive, maintenance driven, but having to advertise those through more traditional processes would have been next to impossible if we didn't have JOC. So the decision by the board to move forward with JOC, have a little bit of a leap of faith there, has absolutely been successful. We could not be more pleased, and we will continue the program next year, and hopefully we'll continue to see the success with that program. So shifting from last year and focusing to the future, this is the second year of our paving program. We developed this and brought this to the board last year as part of the adoption of the 2020 CIP. And we talked last year at length about how, even with the increased funding from SB1, we don't have enough resources to meet all of the demand. And so we talked about establishing priorities, primarily focusing our money on major collector and collector roads that carry high amounts of volume. Also focusing on roads that we would call at-risk or fair shape. And the reason for that is we can treat 5 times as many miles of road that are at risk than roads that are poor or failed. And so the investment is to keep the roads that are at risk of failing in decent and good shape, and then do what you can after the fact to repair poor or failed roads. In addition, we talked about doing it geographically, recognizing that there's significant value in keeping projects within a certain geographic area, especially with all of the indirect costs that are related to construction. If we can keep it all focused in singular geographic areas, and as you'll see in the program, we continue to do that as we move around from one geographic area to the other. We recognize that the program, we can't completely ignore residential neighborhoods, so we've included annual set-asides to address neighborhoods. In particular, I think the early focus would be more developed, more traditional suburban-like subdivisions that have a fair number of homes, not necessarily doing long rural roads that serve only a few residents. But there is a recognition that when we're in those neighborhoods, we should be doing what we can within reason to try and address some of the worst issues in those neighborhoods. I want to highlight, too, that you'll see the program for 2021. After that program, you'll see geographic areas, but you'll see some large funding that doesn't have specific roads, and that's for a reason. That's for planning purposes. We've earmarked funding, but we haven't finalized the roads. And the idea behind that is to go each year prior to that to work with the public, to work with the elected supervisor in that district, to work with others. We'll work with our road crews in particular to identify roads most in need that might not traditionally show up through some traffic study or pavement report. So we'll be working each year to address those and bring more refined data to you each subsequent year. This is the recommendation for 2021, and it remains largely intact from last year. A lot of the roads that are in here are the same roads that were in here the previous year. The ones in the rectangle, inside the rectangle, that are in and around the town of Murphy's, those are new. And the reason for that is, in our correspondence with the local utilities, there were a lot of roads in Rancho Calaveras and the public roads surrounding there that were going to be impacted by CCWD projects in 2021, and no one wants to pave a road only to have a utility trench 2, 3 weeks, months later. And so we agreed to pull those particular roads from the program reintroduce those at a later date once their work is complete. And after we did that in coordination, primarily with CCWD, we had about $700,000 or so money left aside. And so we made the decision, or made the recommendation, to move roads in the downtown Murphys area up a year into the 2021 program. And the advantage for that is it's still somewhat geographic in area. It's a little lower in elevation. There are some very inherent needs to these roads. And so that's why that's there. But those other roads that have been pulled are programmed in an upcoming list. And so you'll see the planning level roads from 2022 and beyond. And again, you'll see the geographic intent here. 2022 has kind of a focus along the 4 corridor in White Pines, Arnold, Dorrington area. There is a pretty sizable set aside of about $750,000 to work with local neighborhoods and identify needs. 2023, we kind of rotate over to District 2. We recognize that a lot of work has been done on roads in District 2, but there are also a lot of roads that weren't impacted by the Butte fire that need attention. And so downtown Moke Hill, I think the neighborhood, Glencoe and West Point and other neighborhoods need some attention, and we recognize that. 2024, we work our way back down to San Andreas. There's a sizable investment in the San Andreas area. And I want to highlight Valley Springs Elementary area as part of a large project, and I'll talk about that in an upcoming slide. But we're really excited about delivering a project there to kind of continue the efforts that the COG has done in the last couple of years to identify some benefits and improvements for that neighborhood. I haven't talked about the CSAs, and so we have a lot of roads programmed in the CSAs. I'll talk about that in the next slide. And you'll see below under the future projects for CCWD coordination, these are the roads that CCWD has identified for major projects this upcoming year. So we've pulled those out. They're standalone projects, and the idea is when CCWD is done, we'll be able to coordinate with them and eventually deliver some sort of project utilizing these roads. So I want to highlight that even though it says TBD, the plan is to deliver these projects likely through a standalone project in the future once CCWD is done with their work in those neighborhoods. Now, I talked about CSAs, and we do have sizable investments there. I want to talk about coordination for a second, because traditionally we would bring this to some sort of workshop in the public session. I know the supervisors with CSAs in their districts have been to those meetings. Some are more well-attended than others. This year, in light of COVID, we went old school and we mailed more than 3,700 flyers to property owners to not only inform them of the upcoming program, but to give them a link, email, an opportunity to provide feedback to Public Works on roads on the program, what they agree with, what they disagree with. Unfortunately, we saw a pretty poor turnout. We only saw about a 1% response rate, which is disappointing. I'm still really glad we did it, because I think in the past we weren't getting a large subset of discussions from the public. This at least lets the public know in those areas about the projects and gives them an opportunity to comment. With that said, we did receive some good feedback from those respondents. We also received comments from our pavement study that we did last year, and the utilities provided comments as well. Again, there were some conflicts, in particular in CSA 1, so we were able to utilize their comments and program appropriately. Again, we do have some roads listed beyond 2021, and the thought is as we get closer to those construction years, we'll reach out to those respective CSAs to discuss in more detail. So, in summary on the paving program, I don't take this lightly, we've paved, between this current year and next year, we'll have paved or resurfaced more roads than what we've done in decades. And we're really proud of that. It's work that's long overdue. We've done a lot of outreach with the CSAs as well as the utilities. We've made a lot of progress, but I do want to highlight, and I dwelled on this a lot last year, the long-term prognosis for funding in our road conditions is not overly optimistic. We do project a long-term downward trend. We do recognize that without some sort of increased funding, there is a risk for our roads to continue to degrade in the long term. With that said, I want to highlight some examples of us doing more with less, and I'm really proud of our flexibility. And a good example is on the surfaces we did this last year. On Burson Road, we had originally planned to overlay that. After further analysis, we determined that a rubberized chip seal could provide a lot of the same value at a lesser cost. And we were able to reutilize that funding to extend paving on portions of Murphy's Grade Road. And so really proud of the opportunity there to deliver a much-needed need on a high-traveled road, and at the same time do that in a manner that recognizes some savings and then reinvest that in other roads. There's an example of us looking at different alternatives. Jesus Maria is another example where we did an innovative full-depth reclamation project that saved millions of dollars, and we were able to get a fantastic road surface out of that for a percentage of what we would have done traditionally. So shifting gears on an overall program, it's still pretty ambitious. We have 16 projects identified. I promise in subsequent years it won't look like this, but this should be, and it's a wide range of projects. There's a few more paving programs. I want to highlight a couple of ones in particular, though. O'Byrne's Ferry Road in Copper Cove, intersection improvements. That intersection is twice, it's the amount of collisions that have occurred there over the last 5 years. It is twice as high of an overall number of collisions as our next highest county maintained intersection. There are safety improvements that need to be done, and so we're exploring those and hopefully going to deliver those next year, in particular a northbound left turn from O'Byrne's Ferry onto Copper Cove. We have 3 bridges next year. One of them is fully funded and ready to go. That's the Shad Road project. I believe that's in District 2. The 2 other projects, Lime Creek and Manji Ranch, those are ready to go, but the state and federal government has had problems for years funding bridge replacements. And so while it's possible those could move, we anticipate that the state and federal government won't be able to fund those this year. Those may get pushed to 2022. Butte Fire Recovery, we have a couple of roads left as part of the Phase 1 program. Phase 2 is a number of other roads, including East and West Murray Creek, and I think Doster's in that list. And that will essentially end that program. We should complete that program and exhaust that funding by the end of that year. We'll have treated somewhere in the neighborhood of about 80 miles or so, and we're really proud of the work we've done there. By this time next year, we should be complete with all of the disaster recovery projects with the exception of the railroad flat slide at Highway 26. And 2 other projects I want to highlight, the Murphy's Lighting Project to expand decorative street lighting in the downtown area, and the State Route 4 Wagon Trail Project. So looking at our funding for this year, again, it's about $32 million, and breaking that down, roughly half is in road preservation projects. And as we present this chart to you in future years, it is my hope that this red slice of the pie, the emergency repair, goes away and it's replaced with safety projects. And I've identified with the board in the past the need to pursue and aggressively pursue safety projects. And this is some of the key projects. You'll see the first 3 are systemic safety projects that should go a long way at improving road safety throughout the county. This impacts all 5 supervisor districts. We're really excited about delivering those projects. We still have, after those 3 bridges that I talked about, we have 5 other bridge projects that we need to deliver. We'll hopefully deliver those by 2025 or 2026. I talked about the winter storm project on the railroad flat slide at Highway 26. That'll likely be a 2022 project. And then the Valley Springs Improvement Project, we've so far earmarked about, I would say, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.1 million between local funding and what's called COG funding through the Regional Service Transportation Program, or RSTP funding. And we're hoping to work collaboratively with the COG and subsequent call for projects to potentially earmark additional funding. And this is in highlight of the study you guys looked at about a year ago from the COG to provide circulation improvements to Valley Springs Elementary School. And this would support that. And our hope is to deliver that in 2024. So in summary, we've made a lot of progress this last year. I'm really proud of our team. We do have a lot of projects scheduled for next year and beyond. They're primarily driven by federal grants and other restricted revenue sources. But hopefully this presents to you a thoughtful plan, a plan to aggressively deliver projects that are needed by the county, but consistent with your expectations, along with sound fiscal policies. And this is the 3rd year of us presenting this to you. And I think now with the track record that we have, you've come to expect this, and our hope is to continue to deliver this with you, for you to continue to provide comments and feedback and help guide our program in the future. So again, this is only a workshop. This is not there's no action item. The idea is to get feedback and comments from you and from the public and to utilize that to bring back final action in early 2021. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
Does the board have any questions? Mr. Mills?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Josh, you forgot to mention the 3 times that Old Birds Ferry Road was hit, or bridge was hit. We've had to do repairs on the K-rails and all of the other work that had to be done down there.
Yeah, and you make a good point, Supervisor Mills, and I want to highlight too that there's a lot of other stuff that's not in here. For example, I was looking at this a couple of days ago, and the debris removal for Independence Road in District 2, that was a $300,000 or so job that we didn't include in this list because it was more, debris removal. I hopefully you don't take away from the fact that this was all we did. First of all, even if that was all we did, that would be a lot of work. But this is on top of all of our things, including responding to emergencies like the O'Burns Ferry Road Bridge, and cooperating with our partners in Tuolumne County to bring some solutions there that I think will improve safety, as well as how quickly we were able to respond to those issues in this last year. I think, especially with the previous problems we've had in the past, is a testament to our ingenuity.
I also want to note that 2 roads got dropped from the list that was on the schedule for last year. One was Hunt Road, the other Salt Springs Valley Road.
Okay. I don't remember those on the list. I will go back and look. I know especially Hunt Road, we've been doing some work with our own crews to pave small sections at a time. Both Hunt and Salt Springs are very low volume. They're pretty thrashed. I do recognize that those roads are in really poor shape. I don't recall those. I will go back and look, and we can certainly look at reintroducing those, but I do have concerns that paving a mile of Hunt Road, and those really need essentially reconstruction, that might affect a disproportionate amount of roads in other areas. But we'll certainly go back and reinvestigate, and if I did include those and make that commitment, we will see what we can do to reintroduce those in some meaningful fashion.
Well, if you can't find it, I'll go ahead and look it up because I have my folders at home.
Okay.
But it might be because of the amount of work that was needing to be done and not just a simple overlay. So I can understand why they would get lost. I just want to see at some point if they were going to be on the list, maybe in 2025 or somewhere down the road, when it would have gotten to. Remember, you did a tour with a former Caltrans person and myself and Russ Thomas on that Hunt Road issue.
I did, and I recognize, and I want to highlight too that if roads aren't on the list, it's certainly not saying that there's not a need. We recognize that the need is disproportionate to the funding that we have, and so we have to make a choice. We essentially have $1 to spend and $5 worth of needs, and so no matter how we spend that, we're doing our best to kind of split up the rations we have and ration it in a meaningful manner. But I recognize roads like Hunt and those are roads that they have some regional access, but the volumes are very low, and so there's that's you see our decision-making process where, and the needs are significant. I mean, that road, especially both those roads, are just thrashed. And so we recognize the need, but we also recognize that, using that could have a disproportionate effect on other roads. But I do recognize your comments, and we will go back and take a look at the commitments we made in the past.
And I noted, it isn't noted, but the safety work that was done around natural bridges to help get that under control this year just needs to be noted. You and the staff have just done a tremendous amount of work here that's, I don't think it's going to be equaled in a long time. To be able to put this many projects together, it's like, how do you top this kind of thing? So congratulations to everyone who has put their face to the work and made it all happen. It is noted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Mr. Stopper?
Well, hopefully you put together the proper template for when you're gone so that they can continue this type of work moving into the future. I mean, you set a great example on how things need to be done. With that said, I want to also say thank you for your outreach to CSA 1 and the other CSAs for that matter, sending letters out to each individual homeowner, getting their input. I think that's that's gone another mile a lot farther than we have in the past when it comes to public outreach and trying to get input from the public on these. Not that you necessarily get a huge amount of response. Looking at these, you brought up the future projects that were in my district: Baldwin, Hart-Dixon, Jenny Lynn, Vista del Lago, that are to be determined for good reason. I appreciate the outreach to the utility districts. I see you still have Garner and Kirby up here on the 2021 list. Those the utility districts got done, so I'm assuming those are going in with the CSA ones next year.
I will go back and verify, Supervisor. I believe Gardner and Kirby, even though they're within the boundary of the CSA 1, they are county-maintained roads. And
Right,
so,
no, you are correct. They are county-maintained roads. What I was saying is that you're going to put the resources in the same areas to pave at the same time so that you aren't moving equipment back and forth across the county, is what you've talked about in the past.
Yeah, and I want to highlight, we haven't figured out how we're going to bundle these together. In reality, likely the stuff in the lower elevations will be bundled as a single project or maybe two projects, and then we'll bundle the higher stuff as another project. And, JOC provides additional flexibility on how to deliver these, and we utilize that this year with both the SB1 projects and the Butte Fire. We bundled Mountain Ranch Road and Sheep Ranch and Railroad Flat as a package. We bundled other roads that needed more attention in a different package. We bundled Parrott's Ferry and Murphy's Grade Road and Angels in Maine in a different package. So the combination in Burson was its own package. We did that through traditional bidding. So we took advantage of the tools we have to provide flexibility to deliver these projects. And I would say the geographic's a big point. And the other thing we'll have to do too is project type. So, if Vista del Lago and Burson need two different types of treatment, that we'll likely bundle those in the types of treatment. But you make an absolutely good point that the geography plays a big role in this.
So are you confident that these ones you got put forward for 2021 can be facilitated through the same way you did this year?
Yes, I am. And like I said, JOC really was a huge part of us being able to do that. And I think in the coming months we'll be, we already have some recommendations, but we'll be meeting in the field with our, to kind of piece these together on how we're going to do this. And I'm fully confident that, between JOC and our other design practices, most, if not all of these are, and certainly if we run into budget issues or things run higher, there's the things that may need to be tweaked or things happen. But, I'm very confident that the lion's share of this is going to be delivered.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. I'm counting on it.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Josh, I'm going to echo Supervisor Mills here. The work that your crew has been getting done, your professional staff, your engineers, businesses, and your road crews in particular, has just been phenomenal. I know in my district, just about everybody's impressed with what you guys have been able to accomplish in a short amount of time. And so, I just want to really express my gratitude. And this is to all that your department has been able to do. And I know it will continue after your imminent departure, but I think this is a very good plan, and I appreciate all your work and the work of your team. Thank you.
Mr. Pack, I have several questions, and I'll just give you the questions.
Sure.
When is public comment due? You said you were looking for public comment. What is the difference? I wasn't clear, I understood, between roads at risk versus failed roads, and that's how you picked roads to do. And can the paving section be tracked to the pavement management program? Because the question is, well, how is it determined which roads are paved, and then we go to the pavement management program? So can they be cross-referenced? And I love the words you used to systemic safety projects. I'm interested in how you interpret that. And the one thank you I have to the team is the road maintenance request. It has drastically reduced the number of phone calls I get. Thank you. So you can answer those in any way you like.
Great, and those are really good questions. First of all, the first question was regarding public comment, and we have done a little bit of outreach to release the plan and let the public know. We haven't done big full-blown stuff. This is the process. This opportunity here that we have as part of the public comment period is certainly an opportunity. But in reality, folks have all year. As a matter of fact, the inclusion of the alerts ferry and Copper Cove was a conversation I had with a local property owner about 4 or 5 months ago. It wasn't on my radar, and then after that property owner brought it to our attention, we looked at the collision history and saw just how bad it was. I think it caught me by surprise, and that's where we said there's something we can do. It's also identified in the Copper Benefit Basin as a project, so there's an opportunity there to deliver a much-needed project. So I would say that comments are taken all year. I would say that if we don't get comments within the next week or two, it's my hope to revise this and get this as a final draft to the board in early January. But like I said, it's an iterative process. We're receiving comments from the public all year long, whether it's through our My Calaveras system. And so there's always time to provide comments and feedback. But as part of this particular document, I would say if we don't get comments by early next week, then or middle next week, that might not be in time to be reflected in the program. The second question you talked about, I talked about the roads at risk versus the failed roads, and so it's the treatment type. And so a road at risk can be treated with preventative treatments, things like chip seals, slurry seals, microsurfaces, those sort of things. A road that's failed, and Hunt Road that Supervisor Mills identified as a good example, that's a failed road. Those need more significant treatments like an overlay. I wouldn't even necessarily use an overlay. You're looking at reconstruction, like a complete regrind and full depth reclamation and reconstruction. Those are very costly projects. And so when you put a chip seal or a slurry seal on the top of a road, in order to extend its existing useful life, you can get a lot more years out of it at a much reduced cost versus ignoring that and then having to deal with a failed road. The other thing with a failed road is once a road's failed, it's kind of like school. Once you fail a class, there's nothing lower than an F. And this is the same case here. So roads can't fail even more. And so the treatment for those roads remains the same. And so the idea is if you treated all the worst roads first, you'd be chasing your tail because by the time you started to get caught up, all those roads at risk would then fall into a failed category or poor category. So that's why we want to attack the ones at risk first. You talked about our paving sections and how it's involved in the pavement management system. Absolutely. In the coming months, we're planning to input all this spate of work that we've done in the last year or so. That will be inputted into our pavement management system. It'll be reflected in a new pavement condition index, which is a score from 0 to 100. I want to highlight, though, that the pavement management system is a first step. We should never rely solely on computers to give us the answers. And the first iteration of this gave us roads that they just were roads that were disproportionate with our own values. And so, it's a good first step. It identifies, treatments and locations that are needed. And then it takes the skilled eye to take those other things into effect, things like volumes, traffic volumes, regional accessibility. The system doesn't utilize those factors of road into its calculations. So, not to pick on, a low volume road may have the same score as Murphy's Grade Road, but Murphy's Grade Road carries a lot more benefit to a region as maybe a smaller local road. So I want to highlight that it's a good tool. It gives us a snapshot of what's going on, but I would not use that solely to make the decisions or take ourselves out of the decision-making process. The last question was about systemic safety, and really systemic safety is looking at an entire road system and being able to do low-cost, high-benefit projects that benefit a region, a series of roads, And a good example is high visibility striping. We have a grant in right now that we'll likely get approval for early next year, about $1.6 million to stripe about 100 miles of road with high visibility striping. By taking a large scale approach to do simple safety projects on a lot of miles of road, studies show that you get a much better benefit doing it than looking at one curve or looking at one intersection. And O'Byrne's Ferry and Copper Cove aside, because that has a disproportionate high amount of accidents, I could spend on an intersection and save 2 or 3 accidents, and the same amount of money on 100 miles of road, I can reduce 100 or 200 accidents. And so it's really a new way to look at safety instead of looking at spot locations and trying to deal with the single worst spot, to predict accidents over a system of roads and then deliver improvements before those accidents occur to reduce those accidents. So I think I hit all of your spots. If I missed anything, let me know. I'd be happy to follow up.
No, you did. You had them. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the public?
No public comments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pack. We look forward to seeing that next in January or February as a fluid wrap.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Hi, is everyone doing all right? Okay. I'd like to move to item 30, Economic and Community Development, a presentation by the Chamber of Commerce.
There we go. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors. Kathy Galino here, along with Morgan Gache from the Chamber, to give you an update on what the Chamber's been doing for the county, all the great work that they have going on, the outreach and the camaraderie that we've had with them, especially during the COVID pandemic that's going on. So I will run the slides for Morgan, and I'd like to turn it over to her.
Thanks, Kathy. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Supervisors. It's an honor to present to you today on behalf of the Calaveras Chamber of Commerce and the Calaveras Business Resource Center, which I will subsequently be referring to as the CBRC. In normal times, I would be standing before you and have representation from my chamber board, especially it being my freshman year here. But in case you have any questions at the end that I may not be able to answer, I'll make sure that my board contacts you and provides any clarity that's needed. And I will say before I start, I'm going to define we, because unfortunately my face is typically the one associated with the chamber. But I actually represent quite a few on behalf of the 205 businesses we represent, but also my phenomenal administrative assistant, Heidi, and my incredible board, which I am so grateful to. So oftentimes I will say we, and that is what it represents. As a membership-based organization, the Chamber, like many of our businesses, has struggled for survival. We spent months living in that space of, is this my last week? And so all the while we've been advocating for and educating businesses on how they can receive funding, most of which we actually didn't qualify for as a 501c6. If you are not a business owner yourself, it may sound like there's copious amounts of funding out there available to businesses. And I have to say, there may be a lot of funding for certain businesses, but there are many businesses who are outliers to this funding made by the criteria of both state and federal funding resources. There are business owners in our county who are not just fighting for the survival of their employees, but they're fighting for the survival of themselves and their household. In March, there was a lot of confusion. And as you recall, it was, what is COVID? It's what can businesses do? What can they not do? And what resources are available to them. Kathy, can you go to the next slide for me? Thank you.
Can everybody see that okay?
I think we're good.
Yes.
from the start, we knew that being the boots on ground and getting connected to understand the need of our businesses was vital. So we placed over 500 calls across the county and discovered who was open, how they were open, and ensured they knew the resources that were available to them early on, including the economic injury disaster loans and the paycheck protection programs. We were one of the only business support locations that were taking business COVID calls 24/7 for the first 4 months. And we definitely had businesses that took advantage of that because they were busy, working sometimes 7 days a week, and some of them still are. We even provided a safe location for our business owners to come into the CBRC and take advantage of the computer lab that we have in order to apply for applications because they themselves didn't have access, whether it was online or through computers. Early on, our restaurants were really unsure of how to stay open or if they should stay open. And so we partnered with the Calaveras Visitors Bureau and began calling every restaurant in Calaveras County to see if they were open, how they were open, and so we could compile it in a list. We called, applicably, the restaurants open in that town and had it shared for almost every location in Calaveras County. We shared it all over social media and through eBlast to ensure the community could continue to support their favorite local eateries. Subsequently, we started a retail list as well, including websites and Facebook links to encourage people to shop online. And as we find ourselves in this horrible second wave, we are back at square one and we are on the phones again, calling every restaurant to make sure that one of the heaviest hit industries is still getting support from our community. Next slide, Kathy. One of the safest ways that we knew that we could support our community was through online content. So videos, articles, interviews, resource links, and anything that we could find that was some sort of assistance, we provided. We were the first in the county to bring in experts and leaders to provide assistance and messages of hope to our businesses. Whether it's a business consultant, SBA, SBDC, Motherlode job training, or leadership from the county, like you see there on the screen with our Madam Chair, we knew it was essential to share as much relevant information as possible. We were also the first to identify the banks participating in the Paycheck Protection Program, which seems like it was eons ago, but that was a major deal when it was first released. And so we got on the phone and called every bank in Calaveras County to see who was participating, and then published the list for people to call as soon as possible. We created over a dozen surveys at the onset of the pandemic that provided heart-wrenching data. And when I say heart-wrenching, and you as supervisors know, because I know your constituents are conversing with you in the same way, it was truly heart-wrenching to hear the stories of how businesses are coping, the needs that they have, and then what resources they've utilized thus far. Next slide, Kathy. Thank you. A couple of months into the pandemic, many of our businesses ran into the lovely analysis paralysis, or information fatigue. There was a constant feed of new information coming from credible sources that often didn't match. So after speaking with some of our amazing partners in the county and City of Angels Camp and some private sector leaders, it was clear that we all felt the need to provide clarity on the guidelines put forth by the state instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. So the concept of unpacking the resilience roadmap was birthed. Whether it was our lovely Kathy Galino from Economic and Community Development, Debbie Ponte from Destination Angels Camp, Colleen Rodriguez from Public Health, Kristen Stranger from Health and Human Services, Lisa Medina from Environmental Health, Emily Graham from Motherlode Job Training, Sandra Hess from Calaveras Wine Grape Alliance, or our lovely Martin Hubbardy from Calaveras Visitors Bureau. Together with these amazing partners, we grouped together to help clarify the ambiguous and daunting guidelines from the state. The Chamber hosted the Unpacking the Resilience Roadmap for each business sector relevant to our businesses in Calaveras. Not only did we have the live attendees, but we shared the videos out to the community and had hundreds of views after we posted them out. I even had businesses reach out to me from outside of the county saying that they used us as a resource for resources and for information before they went to their own county. So I would say that's pretty amazing. All right, next slide, please. It became clear early on that in addition to hosting roundtables, we really needed to create a live living document that gathered updated information from all the resources that we were following and talking about in the roundtables, whether it was CDC, Governor's Office of Business, California Department of Public Health, Calaveras Public Health, SBA, SBDC, you get the list. The document included signage for businesses to use for safety protocols, how to manage employees through COVID, where to get PPE, and how to transition to e-commerce, and a lot more. Kathy, next page, please. It truly was a privilege to work with our local and state government through unique business outreach. Because of Health and Human Services, we had an opportunity to house and distribute free PPE on behalf of the state to our businesses in Calaveras County. PPE was a challenge to find and expensive if you could find it early on in the pandemic, and kind of still now. So the resource was and still is heavily utilized. Because the Chamber and the CBRC were so active early on with providing resources to our rural business community, I had the privilege of getting to know Isabel Guzman, Director of the Office of the Small Business Advocate. She reached out to me and asked if I was willing to participate in her GoBiz podcast called Made in California. It allowed me to showcase how resilient our business community is and how the Chamber and CBRC partnered with other leadership to unleash the guidelines set forth by the state. This allowed me to feature 3 individuals who are pivoting their businesses to accommodate through the pandemic. The first one was Scott Clan of Newsom Harlow. Then we had Lisa Bolton, who invented shopcalaveras.net, and then Susan Weatherby from Moke Hill Nuts. The podcast gave the visibility to Calaveras businesses across the country on how rural businesses do it right. So additionally, and thanks to Kathy Galino, the Chamber and the CBRC were able to support and heavily campaign for Census 2020 through hundreds of phone calls. So thank you to the community that bared with us as we dialed each and every one, and social media interviews with Josh Pack, who we just heard from, and also from Scott Nanick from the Calaveras County Office of Education. We got to discuss how census impacted not only their departments, but individual community members. I also had the opportunity to present on behalf of rural communities, along with Supervisor Ryan Campbell from Tuolumne, for the Census Pep Rally. I also had the honor of getting to meet Senator Umberg, Secretary of State Padilla, State Senator Dr. Pan, and also State Assembly Member Mark Berman. Next slide, please. As we all know, the lovely theme word of this year is pivot. And we had some incredible programs that we've used in the Chamber in the past, one of which was On the Right Track. That was an annual event we held for graduating seniors in high school. The event allowed them to learn basic life skills that aren't necessarily on high school curriculum. It could be how to write a check. It could be, why do I have to pay money to use a credit card? And many, many more opportunities for them to learn. This event gained a lot of traction, and we historically have gotten sponsorships that we would use or scholarships for our graduating seniors. Obviously, because we weren't unable to have that event this last year in May, we still wanted to give the graduating seniors an opportunity to not miss out on one more thing. They missed out on so many of the graduating experiences that so many of us got to experience, and we did not want to be contributing to that. So we decided to come up with a senior scholarship raffle where 100% of the proceeds would be going towards those scholarships. So in thanks to our contributors who donated the prizes and our community who donated for tickets, we were able to raise over $2,500 for the graduating seniors. Another event that we had to reinvent was our State of the County. Some of you may have participated in this in the past, which was traditionally a speaker or two over a breakfast and for limited attendance. And this year, more than ever, we felt that it was important to share the message of where the state of our county was by making it public access. So in special thanks to Martin Huberty of the Calaveras Visitors Bureau and Film Commission, we partnered up and did 11 episodes for State of the County, all held virtually, safely, and interviewed all over, from Congressman McClintock to Abby Browning from the State Office of Emergency Services, from Scott Manick, Office of Education, to Doug Archer, Mark Twain Medical Center, and of course, Mayor Oliveira. And to some of you that were also in this room here, Madam Chair, Al Alt, Kristen Stranger, and Kathy Galino also participated. They spoke on issues facing our businesses in the community and Calaveras County at large. Our nation has not experienced the message of shop local more than it has today. Recognizing the need to not only encourage shopping local, but to dine local, drink local, and use local services, we created the Choose Calaveras campaign, hence the logo that you see there on your screen. The goal was to create a county pride, to really showcase the offerings our county businesses have to offer, and encourage individuals in the county and visitors to pause before they automatically go to Amazon or leave the county to do their shopping. We want to keep our dollars local. Over the course of the next year, we're going to be continuing to campaign to educate the community on what unique offerings the county truly has. Additionally, we're going to be providing training and resources for businesses to make it easy for people to give them their money. While Choose Calaveras was created by the Chamber and the CBRC, it's an inclusive campaign for all to embrace and really to be proud of what the county has to offer. Next slide, please. In anticipation of the second wave that we are now in of COVID-19, but also recognizing that there is probably not a time more than ever we have needed to experience the holiday spirit, we decided to have an event called Keep the Cheer Here. Keep the Cheer Here is a county-wide holiday outdoor decorating contest, and it really affects and impacts 3 different kinds of people. There are homeowners that are participating that really want to showcase their home. There are business owners who not only like to decorate, but they also want the promotion for their business. And then there's the families that are involved that really want to experience the Calaveras holiday spirit in a safe way, but still accessing it through our live map that we have online. I have to say, this is absolutely a fundraiser, not a fundraiser. 100% of the money is really going back into using prizes, trophies, and resources from our local businesses here in Calaveras County. I am very hopeful and excited about the potential of the partnership that we can have with Community and Economic Development, the Calaveras Visitors Bureau, for the EDA grant. Kathy Martin and I have spent countless hours discussing, planning, and trying to think of how we can provide the best resources for our business community. And so we continue in anticipation, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we will get that very soon. And then in discussions with the Calaveras Mariposa Community Action Agency Director, Stacy Johnston, my predecessor, we realized the importance of providing opportunities to our low-income individuals who may dream of owning their own business one day. We're working on a plan that would provide educational opportunities to support their dreams. And then finally, the CBRC has a mission of serving as a hub for businesses by creating a thriving economy in Calaveras and fostering the long-term prosperity. We are so incredibly grateful to the county, to you as supervisors, for your support of the CBRC through the Huberty building. Though we've had to keep our doors locked for walk-ins, it has been heavily utilized to serve as a hub for businesses, picking up resources, needing a safe place to meet, using our computer lab, or as a revolving door for individuals coming to Motherlode job training, looking for employment assistance, or businesses that are looking for manpower. In addition to the potential growth from the EDA grant, we're waiting on final approval for the CVRC to become a 501c3. This will provide many more opportunities for the CVRC to continue to serve Calaveras County businesses. Though I am, as I said, in my freshman year here, I feel like we have hit the ground running from day one. We have a long way to go. We have big dreams and big plans, and looking forward to 2021 being an even more successful year and hopefully COVID-free. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share. And I have to say, if any of this information was new to anyone watching, then I encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, on our website, because we are constantly funneling out information. So it would be a really great resource for you. And with that, if any of you have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer at this time.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you, Morgan. I have to say, you and I met just before the COVID took off, and you definitely had a heck of a freshman year. But I really want to thank you. I think what's happening here is exactly. Unfortunately, it took COVID to make it all happen. But all the agencies working with the county, trying to work together is just. I hope it's working because it feels good, at least what I'm looking at. I'm seeing some real innovation amongst several businesses. Yesterday, I was online with Calaveras Grown. I bought Gold Country Roasters coffee. I think I bought some baked goods from down in Wallace, vegetables from the high school garden, and they're all delivered to my local library branch for a 3% service fee. So I'm seeing some innovations that I hope will keep long term. When we come out of this tunnel, we could be in a better space. Let's hope. Thank you for all you're doing, Morgan.
Thank you.
Did you have anything?
Thank you, Morgan, for all the work you've done. And like Jack says, your freshman year was highly involved with a lot of different things and a lot of different obstacles that you had to work through. I do have a question on Keep the Cheer Here, your contest. When's the last date that you can sign up for that?
You have plenty of time, Supervisor Tofinelli, don't worry.
Okay. I wanted the public to know, though, a specific date, too.
Yes, thank you so much. So the final date is actually going to be on Friday the 18th, because at that point we will be judging and distributing trophies and prizes on Monday the 21st. So Friday the 18th.
Friday the 18th, and then judging will start going forward from there. And the 21st,
Exactly.
You will give out all the winners, and they'll be published on your website?
Yes, so go to calaveras.org, O-R-G, and it will be there. And additionally, if you're a family that just wants to safely drive around in your vehicle to see that holiday spirit, it is going to have a live map up on our website on Friday, December 11th. So
Absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And again, to enter, you can go to your website and fill out an application or whatever what you need to do, and then you can go through your website for the $25 fee and pay it through the website also?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Are you looking for judges? I think Gary
Just,
volunteered. He's working on it.
I wouldn't be opposed if you need somebody to judge.
We'll keep that in mind. We actually need someone to dress up as an elf to distribute gifts.
Oh,
so
That would fit Jack perfectly.
I'm on crutches, brother. It's all you.
Even better.
Supervisor Mills.
You get to be the elf on the shelf. Anyway, Morgan, you can remember in college days being pledged and going through hazing. I don't think we could have planned this hazing you've gone through this year, but you stood the test of time, and hopefully everything will only get better from here. So It's been a challenge. I don't think that anyone in their job application could have said, I want to go through this, but you've done well. So congratulations in getting through this first year, and everything should be uphill from here.
Thank you, Supervisor Mills.
Supervisor Stopper.
Thank you, Morgan. And, a few things you brought up, going in, you switched gears. You had to start thinking outside the box, along with a lot of other entities, and getting, it was great that you all came together the way you have, and support, not just sort of the support of the businesses, but the employees that have been displaced. And there's something you brought up about the outliers. And this is something that's been a reality since the very beginning. These funds did come from the state, they did come from the feds, but not everyone fit in the hole, because a lot of these holes were square, and a lot of these businesses are round pegs, so to say. And so they didn't qualify, and this is a big concern. Keep working with mother job training. It's not always the business, but it's the employees, because we need to be able to staff businesses later, and we want to keep these employees within our county. They're valued people. And there's, talking with the economic development, Central Sierra Economic Development, and Dave Theeney on the Mother Job Training Agency. There's some other opportunities for people for money for bills that that haven't been used up. So please look towards them and talk to him to access those also in the future. And just thank you for everything you've done. It hasn't been easy, and I'm glad you stood up straight and worked hard. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Stopper.
Are there still free PPEs available for the businesses?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you for saying that. We do. In fact, we just advertised that again yesterday. So if there are any businesses that still need PPE, it's not an indefinite bottomless well, but it's supposed to be until you get an order. So if you do not have it, we have face coverings, we have gloves, and we have a limited supply of individual size hand sanitizers. So please contact us at the chamber, and we will set up a time. In fact, in the beginning, it was almost like I was a ice cream truck driving down Murphy's, throwing out free PPE, for the first couple of weeks. It's dwindled down, but we're seeing definitely a trend upward again as we see more closures. So please definitely reach out to us. We have it.
Well, as a former president of the chamber, I really, really appreciate the positive. We're going to make something happen. Everything you mentioned was all positive. And the fact that you've reached out to businesses in innumerable different ways, whether it was social media or whether it was phone calls, the partnerships that the chambers put together, and recognizing the innovation that many of our businesses have experienced. You mentioned Clan, Bolton, and Weatherby as 3 examples. And I think if we can keep dealing with the positive like you're doing, it'll do magic for us during the second or third wave. It's truly appreciated. Thank you. And thank for Kathy Galino for partnering also. Appreciate it. Are there any other questions or comments? Any public comments?
No public comments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Galino, for bringing this to us.
You're welcome.
I'd like to move to item 31. I know I've usually gotten you out by noon for the last few months, but it was time that we stayed a little longer. So, Mr. Osborne, are you with us?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Yes, I am.
He just woke up.
Did you hear that, John?
Yes, I heard that too. Good afternoon,
can tell by
Madam
the
Chair
banner.
and Supervisors. What I have is just a preview.
Wait, John, just a minute. We're laughing at you. I mean, for you, with you, not at you. Yeah, he was just talking about your bid hair, you know, that you and Supervisor Garamendi and Al Alt have or don't, as the case may be. Okay.
Yeah,
Would
we
you-
all seem to magically find the same barber.
Okay, Mr. Osborne, could you please proceed? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Supervisors. What I have for you today is just a preview of something that we're going to roll out onto our public website. I wanted the board to see this before very many people of the public saw it. First of all, I need to thank three important departments that have collaborated on this with OES. And the first one is the GIS team, better known as the GIS Ninjas. They have really helped in bringing what you're about to see to fruition and have helped shape what I wanted to do and made it a reality. The second is IT, Stan and his team. Stan is as excited as I am to be able to be providing this kind of information, and we've even talked today about some of the future iterations of this website that you're going to see in the near future. And lastly is public health. We have been partnering with them and looking towards them to see, you know, what kind of data there was available and that it was accurate. So, so I appreciate all the input from those departments. And without further ado, I'll share my screen and show you what we've been collaborating on. So what you see on the screen before you is what we've termed the Calaveras County Community Information Center. Most of what you see here in these upper tabs are all GIS-based informational sites. The first being this one here. It is a COVID-19 site, and you can actually check on any county here in the state. We start with C, so we are right towards the top of the list. And if you click on that, it provides an awful lot of information about not only our county, but the COVID cases and the downstream effects of that. The bigger information, and then you can actually scroll down, and it will give you some information about schools and things like that. This is brought to us by Cal OES, and we have our collaboration has a vision for a little bit different, more personalized to our county representation of this. I'll switch over here to Nevada County and show you what they've done with the very similar technology that we're using here, and we're looking to develop something like this as far as the COVID board. So switching back, in thinking about rolling out this information center, I tried to get my mind wrapped around, or we tried to get our mind wrapped around the common things that people may want to know about, especially during urgent or emergency times, and things that affect us as on a county-wide basis. So of course that leads us right into PSPSs. And this is the PSPS, PG&E's PS site, and you can actually click on this and see any outage across the state, really, but also across the county. This is the only one that's active in the county right now, and it's by Phoenix Lake. and they are on site to review that, or to restore power. The next is our near and dear to our heart, the evacuation application. It's present here just as a convenience factor to make it more convenient for people to look at. The next one is our webcams. These are actually fire cams. So oftentimes when we have a fire here in the county, people can dig out these sites and look at a particular fire camera. This is Sierra Vista, and it looks like it's looking to the south. And there's other kinds of cameras on this as well, such as if you click over here on Highway 99, it will show you what the traffic looks like if you're about to go on a trip. Moving right along to the fire incidents page, we've tweaked a page that provided worldwide fire data, and we've made it our own. This representation here, you can see all of the 2020 fire incidents that we've had up and down the state. And the circle here that you see is actually an active fire. So that's the creek fire. It's still at 96% contained. So there's still crews actively working on that fire. If you see the little dot here, that would be the Walker fire that we had earlier. And it provides some empirical data about the fire itself. The next, moving into weather, because weather is directly tied to fire incidents, PSPS events, and things like that. We have a couple of different weather choices that we've provided here. This one is a map that is currently set to look at wind patterns. And so that helps us here in Calaveras determine where the winds are coming from, and when you look at the broader picture, why they're coming that way. The Santa Anas that we had earlier this week in Southern California were because there was a high right here, and the lows were coming up and then catching that south wind and causing those Santa Anas. There's a lot of click-around ability in here that I won't bore you guys with if you're not a weather geek. The next one are the PG&E weather stations. And the idea behind having this is these are the weather stations that PG&E uses to make real-time decisions about PSPS events and about fire weather behavior. And as we kind of hone in on Calaveras County, it's currently set to wind speed. So you can see the wind speed and direction within the county. That's helpful to know if there's a fire and you're wondering if it might be blowing your way or away from you. It's also very handy. You can switch and it will give you data like humidity. That's important if you're looking at, whether or not you can, in the middle of summer, you should go out and mow your lawn after 10 a.m., which you shouldn't. But you can actually see here that the relative humidity is still relatively low for this time of year, some down in the teens there. And then the last is air quality. And this was directly tied to the smoke that we had this summer. We thought that it might be useful to have this kind of information current. In preparing for this presentation today, I've kind of been able to keep an eye on Calaveras. This is actually at the Government Center, the sensor, and we did bump up into the yellow, which was mildly unhealthy, but it's nice to see that we are back down into the green. So, again, our idea about this was to make this a one-stop shop for critical information's sources that influence what happens in Calaveras and the emergencies that take place around here. So that is what I have for you today, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Stopper.
Real quick, on the COVID page, how often is that updated and what's the lag on it? Is that from last Friday, the posting?
This particular website from Cal OES is actually real time. It has.
Go and leave it on that page.
Yeah, I'm just refreshing it to see if it's moved anything at all.
It's hard for me to completely make out the words, but I think the it was not that one. It was the next page down. Yeah, that one. that broken heart, is that hospitalizations
That is ICU beds
that are open or filled?
that are available.
Okay.
And I actually believe that number should be 7 here in our county. But this is
Okay.
so the bed is obviously licensed beds. This is staffed beds, so beds that are available and have nurses and support personnel. This is our daytime population. Excuse me. Total businesses, total employees, at-risk populations by either with disabilities, older than 65, households without vehicles.
Yeah, that's
There's a lot of data here.
There is.
And we liked this particular page, but as just in the time since the regional health orders came out, I mean, we're all at some point data consumers, including myself and the people that have been collaborating on this. And we liked this in the beginning, but now that things have shifted, it doesn't really answer a lot of our questions, like how many ICU beds are available, how many are filled, what's our, some of that data that really answers the regional questions. And that's why we're hoping to develop a little bit more Calaveras-centric story map and roll it out, similar to what Nevada County has done.
Well, you've been working real well with tech, and it looks pretty user-friendly. You've come a long ways in putting all this together. It looks good. Thanks, John.
Thank you. It's all our tech and GIS ninjas. They're really good at what they do.
Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you. John, is this live? Can we, is this something we can log on to now?
Yes, our intention was to show it to you folks. We always like to keep you guys in the very much know, and it will be live in the very near future. But what you're seeing is live data population. So it's active, and we're just going to actually stand it up onto the website either later today or tomorrow.
What is the website?
Well, right now, it'll actually be a button on our homepage for the county. It'll probably be right here in this little blank area.
Okay.
And anybody can click on it. We've lovingly referred to it as the Calaveras County Community Info Center. And so it'll be up and available here shortly.
Mr. Garamendi?
I just thank you, John, for answering my question, and thank the Doug and Dan over in our GIS ninjas, and Stan and all the crew. It's amazing what these guys can produce.
Mr. Osborne, is it going to show the positivity rate?
That kind of data is, there is literally a plethora of just COVID-19 data out there. And our hope with this is to distill that down into a more consumable product. So I'm not sure if that data is really out there. We would have to go out there and find a reasonable source for it. Part of what you see here with all of these different tabs is right now they go out and find the data and keep it up to date. it's really fire and forget in the sense of there's nobody behind the scenes feeding this data in every 3 or 5 minutes. And our hope is that during the pandemic, all of the things that we have going on here in Calaveras County, that we don't get that granular to the point where we have to depend on somebody coming up with a spreadsheet or emailing or inputting data for us. We want to be able to go out in Cyberland, extract this data, and bring it home to Calaveras County and represent it visually so that people can make sense of it and get their questions answered.
Mr. Osborne, my concern is that the figures that this has and the figures that public health comes out with on Tuesday and Friday are a close match. Because, as you're right, people are being very data-centric these days, and they want to know, well, how come it shows 5 beds when Mr. Archer said there was only 1 in ICU, and it shows whatever for a number of cases, and public health shows a different amount. So that's, excuse me, just the one concern I have. And I have talked to Ms. Stranger about the positivity rate, because we used to do it and we've stopped, and that is one of the questions I get on what is our positivity rate, because we are encouraging people to be tested. Thank you. Mr. Mills?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I know that Kristen had talked about doing the reporting on COVID by zip code. Will you be able to put that in so if somebody living in Copperopolis, they can just click on Copperopolis and they know right there how many cases are current?
Yes, that is our goal. We have reached out to some of our IT friends, GIS friends, and OES friends around the region. This happens to be Nevada counties, and they actually have that it's split up by zip code. So we're working with them to not reinvent that wheel and hope to bring something more like this to us that actually provides some of the percentages, like the total cases. Of those total cases, 32% of them are active. Here is Nevada counties, their total deaths, which is 0.95% of the total cases. So it does bring a lot of that data more home to us and presents it in a visual manner that's pretty easy to understand. So, and that's one of the things to address Madam Chair's concern about the difference in data. This data actually comes from, it's reported from our public health to CDPH. And then, so there may be a slight difference. We've spot checked this particular one. And Kristen and her team have viewed this and found it as acceptable and reliable. So we are going to continue to partner with them to bring a product that is improved and refined towards their needs and our residents' needs to answer questions better.
John, the real point is going to be the accuracy and the quality of the information. If people feel that the information is not concurrent and it's not accurate, they're going to walk away from it very quickly.
Yes, that is very true, sir. And that's why we've been careful in our data selection to know that it comes from trusted partners and reliable sources.
Thank you, John.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the public, please?
No public comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Did you?
Thank you, folks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Osborne. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
I'd like to move to item 32. Do any of you have any comments on the calendar?
Anything, Mr. Mills?
Yeah.
What am I going to do about it?
Sorry. You were being humorous.
I know.
I had
That's
to
good.
follow through with it.
Okay, I'll take a motion, please, on approving our calendar for next year.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Tuffanelli. Do I have a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
A second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes on a 5-0 vote of the board. Thank you. Ms. Turner, are you with us now? Rebecca?
I'm here.
Oh, hi. Mr. Mills, you pulled item 23.
I did. Ms. Turner, I went through some backgrounding on this election, and my research indicates that all systems used in California use the weighted race feature, and not just the 40 of the 58 counties that are using Dominion in their systems. Did you know whether or not that feature was turned on or turned off in our system?
We do not use a weighted race.
In the case of the ballot images that are scanned into the machines, do you save those images as a QR code or some type of code?
So yes, they're essentially saved as part of the election. They are stored on the computers that the ballots were scanned on.
Okay. In the case of those people that may not be U.S. citizens, in what way did elections confirm whether or not a person was a U.S. citizen prior to voting in the federal election?
So that is part of the registration process itself. And we do follow if they are in the DMV database and the DMV has checked their registration status or their citizenship. We go with that as far as they shouldn't be in the DMV database if they are not U.S. citizens. We do also, when we receive the registration cards, we look as each voter who registers is to check yes or no whether or not to citizenship. And if that is not checked, we follow up with the registrants. And if it is marked no, obviously, we also follow up with the registrants to find out why it's marked no.
But your office or your poll workers do not confirm at any time whether or not someone is a U.S. citizen?
The poll workers definitely do not confirm whether or not somebody is a citizen. Again, it is checked during the registration process if they marked yes or no. It does essentially fall on the individual that if for some reason it was found out they were not a citizen, they would be the one liable for registering as if they were.
So did we have any state-only ballots available for this election?
We can always make state-only ballots available. The only times they're typically utilized is for federal overseas voters. So voters who currently reside outside of the country with unknown amounts of time when they're going to return, they would vote a federal-only ballot.
You know that many states are being sued right now over the concept of changing the rules immediately preceding an election, and that Mr. Padilla sent out an emergency change to voting rules about 30 days before this election. That violates the Electors Clause in the Constitution. You're aware of that?
So in our instance, there was not any rules specifically changed that would have impacted how we would have conducted the election, primarily because we had already switched to become a Voter Choice Act county. And so a lot of the rules that went into play that I think you're referencing primarily impacted counties that were polling place only counties prior to the election. So if anything, any rules we enabled, all they did was further assist voters as far as ballot tracking was new for November. But anything else that was new only impacted the counties that weren't already a Voters' Choice Act county.
In the case of Hard InterCivic, since we have purchased that equipment, has there been any updates?
Yes, there was one update prior to the March primary.
Did they provide you that off of the internet or via flash drive, or how did they do it?
No, we never update our system via. If there's an update, an actual technician comes out and they have the software and
we witness it go onto the computer. So
But are
again,
you-
nothing from the internet ever goes onto those computers that are counting ballots.
Are you aware of all of the software updates themselves and what
Yes.
they entail?
Yes, in order for a software update to be put into place, first of all, it has to pass federal certification, and then in our state, we also have a certification for any software that it has to pass through as well. And in order for us to even put software on, the state has to give us permission. So we can't just update the computers without those processes going into place. And in addition, anytime we update our software, we're required to send the latest version to the state as well.
In this election, as you know, I appeared in person to vote, and there were ballot stickers that were used at the polls. Once a sticker was placed, it covered or partially covered the signature of a previous voter. Were those signatures used or compared for registration, or what was the purpose of signing those stickers?
The purpose is to compare the signature, and the signature, now that we switched from the paper roster to the electronic roster, is compared automatically. So at the time that you signed, that is when it would have been compared against the database of the voter registration.
And why was I asked for my birth date?
To confirm that it was you. So we are typing your name into a database that may have multiple, so we request the date of birth to verify that we have the proper voter prior to issuing the ballot.
Do you understand the reason for my questions?
I'm looking for where this is leading.
Okay, because I'm really concerned about whether or not what happened here in California and in Calaveras County is what we're dealing with in many of the other states in the union. And this is a federal election, it's not a state election, so we have to follow the Constitution and the rules of the electors in the Constitution. It has nothing to do with the rules of the state at that point. The state only elects the electors. So I'm just very concerned that if your office can't confirm the eligibility of a person to vote in an election, and we count that ballot, whether or not we're diluting the vote, and in essence creating an issue with equal protection clause of the Equal Rights Act 1964. That's where I'm going with it.
Do you have a formal complaint you'd like to make, Mr. Mills,
No,
for the election?
I will eventually be doing that, but it has to go through this process. So with that, I'm only explaining to you and to the public why I will not be supporting the certification for this election today.
Okay, thank
Supervisor
you.
Mills, did you just say you'll be filing a suit against us?
Complaints.
A complaint?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't think the president wants the vote in this county overturned. Did pretty well here. All right.
I would like to point out part of the canvas, some of the things we look at in addition is how voters are registered, and if the results were to turn the opposite direction of what we would expect based on our voter registration, we would call that into question and then look into matters further. As it happens, our results turn out exactly like what we would expect with our current party registration. So.
I appreciate your response. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on this item? Mr. Stopper?
I just want to thank you for doing your due diligence and working the process so transparently, Rebecca. It's there may be into question other parts of the United States, but I have solid confidence in how you conducted yourself in Calaveras County, and I do appreciate the way you have. So thank you, thank your staff, thank the poll workers out there from both sides that watched this entire process, and you allowing everyone to do as such. It's a great honor to be able to vote in this country, and I appreciate you adhering to our Constitution and the way things have proceeded throughout this process this year. We can question other areas, but I have full confidence in you. With that, Ms. Callaway, if you want to
So are
pull
there any other
public comment
questions?
first.
Are there any questions? Did you
No,
have a
I don't have
comment?
any questions, but I want to, Rebecca, you and your department do a very good job. I'm very proud of you and all of your staff. And the only thing I have to comment is next election, use someone else's phone. I lost mine for 2.5 weeks. Other than that, great job.
You lost your
And I
phone?
would second the motion that
You lost your phone?
they used the AT&T connection for outreach to the other polls, and when they shut it off, it shut my phone off, and AT&T refused to turn it back on, and it was a big drawn-out thing, just going on and on.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Are there any public comments on this?
There are no public comments.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like the motion for a resolution declaring the results of the canvass for the presidential general election held on November 3. I had a motion by Supervisor Stopper.
So
a
moved, Madam Chair.
Second by Supervisor Tuffanelli. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Passes on a 401. Supervisor Mills in opposition. Thank you. I'd like to move to supervisor comments. Do any of you have anything you want to say? We are going to be out of here by 4 or sooner, so keep it short. Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. We have to be done by 4 o'clock so we can go back into closed session. Ooh, not used to these long meetings anymore. Okay, Mr. Mills, do you have something? No, nothing? Mr. Tuffanelli?
I have a Mountain Valley EMS meeting tomorrow,
Okay,
9 a.m. It'll be a Zoom meeting.
Mr. Stopper?
I had a Central Sierra Economic Development meeting a few weeks ago. I just want to reiterate that there's other avenues to help some people out there. There is some money out there through these hard and trying times, especially going into the holiday season like we are. So, if anybody out there thinks that they may qualify for something, there's stuff to help pay your bills. Go to Motherlode Job Training. They have the clear path for you to be able to file for those. Other than that, Madam Chair, I just want to say thank you.
Mr. Garamendi? Okay, I have an Area 12 Agency on Aging meeting this week.
Oh,
Yes.
I do have something. CMCA yesterday, we did approve the block grant. We had a quorum. We made it by one. We made it.
I would have called in Supervisor Mills, but I was in the X-ray room with my wife at the hospital. So.
I'm sorry. That's more important. That's way more important. But anyway, we did approve the block grant for next year. So.
Okay,
all good.
thank you. Ms. Simpson, do you have anything?
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, we look forward to having you for a little while longer, unless you know something we don't, and then we want to know what it is. Susan, do you have anything you'd like to share? Okay, Mr. Alt, do you have anything?
No, Madam Chair. No, Madam Chair. Just looking forward to the rest of closed session at 4.
Okay, Miss Edwards, do you have anything?
I do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. We're going into closed session. We'll reconvene next Tuesday. And it will be the last meeting for Mr. Mills, Mr. Pack, and Mrs. Stranger. Thank you.